It is Tuesday. It is the 27th of May. I'm Moon Geun-hye. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. More emphasis on education, society, and culture. That's what President Park Geun-hye aims to do by appointing a deputy prime minister solely in charge of those affairs. The Korean government will set up a wireless communication network among rescue agencies. Now, this is a part of efforts to better deal with national emergencies in the wake of last month's deadly fare disaster. And Korea's May consumer sentiment slips to an 8-month low, dampening hopes for a firm recovery in domestic consumption. We'll have those stories and more, but first let us begin this Tuesday afternoon at the nation's top office. President Park Geun-hye plans to place much more emphasis on the nation's education, social, and cultural affairs. And to do just that, she sees the need to establish a second deputy prime minister solely in charge of those matters. During a cabinet meeting, the president laid out the duties of the prime minister's office under her newly pledged government restructuring. The prime minister will be in charge of law and order, public service reforms, and rooting out corruption. Now, one of the two deputy prime ministers should maintain a focus on the economy, and the other, newly established deputy, would oversee matters related to education, society, and culture. Now, it's something the president says is needed to increase efficiency and responsibility in policymaking. And during that cabinet meeting, the president also weighed in on the manhunt for the practical owner of the sunken Seoul ferry, calling on officials to make sure Yoo Byung-hun is brought to justice over the deadly accident. She stressed that the true causes behind the disaster must be uncovered and addressed so that no accident like such repeats itself. Referring to her pledged reforms to bolster national safety, the president ordered the cabinet to carry out the drive with a sense of duty. She then said the integrated emergency response system under the soon-to-be-established Safety Ministry should work at the highest level possible to save lives and prevent maritime accidents. And in light of last month's Seoul ferry disaster, government plans to establish an integrated disaster and safety control tower that is being accelerated. Well, the government said Tuesday that the project will be launched earlier than first thought and will be completed by 2017. It added that the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning will take control of the technical system and will verify whether it's up to the task by the end of July. A pilot project for the control tower is expected to launch in some parts of the country as a test run next year. Shifting our focus to the upcoming local elections, just a little over a week away. The ruling Saenuri Party is facing an uphill battle in the face of public anger over the government's poor handling of last month's ferry disaster. Opposition candidates are in the lead in 6 key races, even in one area where the ruling party usually enjoys strong support. Our political correspondent Ji Myung-gil paints us a clearer picture.
Candidates of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD, and independent candidates are still out in front of their Saenuri Party rivals in 6 of 7 key battlegrounds in the June 4th local elections. That includes the races for mayor in the cities of Seoul and Incheon and for governor in the Gangwon-do and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces. An opinion poll conducted by Matrix has the incumbent mayor of Seoul, Park Geun-hye, with a comfortable lead over his conservative rival, Chung Mong-jun. While in the race for Gyeonggi-do governor, the opposition candidate Kim Jin-pyo has made up ground against the ruling party's Nam Kyung-pil and now leads by 0.2 percentage points. The most surprising turn of events may just come from Busan. The ruling party has held a firm grip on the position of mayor in the southern port city for decades, but the recent polls show independent candidate Oh Go-don with a comfortable lead over the Saenuri Party candidate. With just over a week until election day, the ruling party candidate is in the lead in just one of the 7 key races, that being for mayor of the administrative city of Sejong, where Saenuri candidate Yoo Han-sik is up against his NPAD rival. Korea's local election results are considered a barometer of public sentiment for the ruling party and the government, which has borne the brunt of criticism in recent weeks over its handling of the April ferry disaster that left more than 300 people dead. Kim Young-git, ARIRANG News.
In Seoul's National Assembly, in less than an hour from now, lawmakers will elect the new speaker and vice speakers of the latter for the latter part of the 19th National Assembly. It's customary for only one candidate from the ruling party to be nominated for the speaker position in Korean Parliament. And as five-term lawmaker Chung Eui-hwa has already been chosen through an inter-party election in the Saenuri Party, he'll most likely become the new leader of parliament. Now, as for one of the vice speakers, the ruling party has tapped four-term lawmaker Chung Gap-yoon. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, has yet to decide who will fill the other vice speaker position. It's been almost 6 weeks since the ferry tragedy in this country, and its impact is seen in various parts of the society, and of course, the economy is no exception. In the wake of the disaster, many Koreans have preferred to stay in and tone down their activities, causing consumer sentiment to plunge to an 8-month low in the month of May. Our Song Ji-sun has the details.
The ferry disaster that killed some 300 people last month hit consumer sentiment hard, with fewer people feeling the urge to go shopping or eat out. The somber mood since the sinking prompted organizers to call off major festivals as well. The Bank of Korea said on Tuesday that the consumer sentiment index in May tumbled 3 points from April to 105. The index is a barometer of consumers' overall economic outlook. A reading above 100 means more consumers are optimistic about the future than those who are pessimistic. But the May figure is the lowest since September last year, when the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to begin tapering its stimulus program sent jitters through emerging markets. Reflecting a sedate and cautious mood, money spent on travel and entertainment plunged in May, while medical spending edged up. Readings on current living conditions and future spending also shed 2 points compared to a month earlier. A separate survey conducted on small and mid-sized businesses showed 8 out of 10 business owners that they had been affected by the dropping consumer sentiment. They reported an average of 30% drop in revenues after the ferry disaster from the same period last year. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Well, a prominent trend in the Korean society these days is that more Korean women in their 30s continue on with their careers. Fresh data shows their presence in the workforce reached a record high last year. And while this is a positive development in a traditionally patriarchal country like Korea, it comes with other consequences. ARIRANG Shin Se-min tells us what those are.
Korean women are the most active they've ever been in the workforce. The labor participation rate of women in their 30s hit its highest rate on record last year, according to Statistics Korea. The percentage of women between the ages of 30 and 39 working was 57% in 2003. It's been on a steady rise in recent years, up about 1 percentage point each year since 2009, with the exception of 2008 when the global financial crisis hit. Researchers at the Korea Women's Development Institute attributes the growth of women in the workforce to more women going to university and putting off marriage, which has also had an effect on Korea's birth rate. The total number of newborn babies declined last year for the first time in 4 years. Government efforts have also played a role as they've been encouraging companies to provide more flexible working hours so that women can more easily juggle home and work life. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, Korea's main gateway, Incheon International Airport, is the world's best in terms of airport service quality, and it has been the world's best for 9 straight years. And it has an aim of becoming a global aviation hub. But there is a problem. The number of international passengers transferring through the airport is on the wane. Our Connie Kim reports.
There are concerns Incheon International Airport may lose its reputation as a global aviation hub as the number of passengers making international transfers has been on the decline in recent months. The Transport Ministry says the number of transfer passengers dropped about 15% since last August to 525,000 in February. The transfer rate is an important indicator of a hub airport, as other hub airports have a transfer rate of around 30%. Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport has a transfer rate of 42%. Germany's Frankfurt Airport rate is 40%, with Singapore Changi Airport at 27%. Incheon trails behind at 17%. Incheon International Airport's transfer rate sits outside the global top 10. The Korean daily Joseonilbo attributes the decline to fewer Japanese and Chinese passengers passing through the airport. Some 100,000 Japanese and Chinese passengers have turned away from transferring from Korea's main airport. Japan increased its handling capacity to 50% last year, and China has begun launching direct flights to North America. Experts say Incheon International Airport needs to offer more convenient transfer routes, cut transfer times within the airport, and establish tourist attraction spots to boost passenger numbers. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and the Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. A bill which recently passed the U.S. lower house has ordered the Pentagon to examine ways of strengthening missile defense cooperation among Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel will have to report back to the Armed Services Committee no later than 6 months after the bill goes into effect. Our Na Hyung-kyung explains what this bill is.
The U.S. National Defense Authorization Act for the year 2015 passed the House of Representatives last week. It stipulates that the Secretary of Defense should assess and identify opportunities for boosting missile defense cooperation among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. If enacted, the Pentagon will evaluate whether the three countries can share more military information, have their missile systems integrated, and conduct joint exercises. After picking up the information on Tuesday, experts in Seoul say Washington's move could face resistance as South Korea does not want to share military intelligence with Japan. The passing of the bill comes in line with Japanese media reporting that U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice discussed the matter with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The Yomiuri Shimbun report said Rice suggested immediately sharing information among the three nations if South Korean radar detects a North Korean missile launch. Attention now lies on how the South Korean government will react and if it will react to Washington's move, especially considering a U.S. Congressional Research Service report last year said Seoul would benefit the least given its close proximity to Pyongyang. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
In the aftermath of Europe's so-called political earthquake, French President François Hollande said the European Union had become too complex and remote and needs to change. While French parties critical of the EU had gained substantial ground in EU's parliamentary vote that wrapped up on Sunday. In France, Hollande's Socialist Party was pushed into third place after the far-right National Front swept to victory with a preliminary 25% of the vote. In Britain, the UK Independence Party, which has campaigned to pull out of the 28-nation bloc, is poised to become the country's ruling party for the first time. Well, President Hollande, who has been a supporter of the EU, said the union had overcome the Eurozone crisis at the cost of disheartening the people and promised to reaffirm that the priority is growth, jobs, and investment when leaders meet on Tuesday. Over in Nigeria, its defense chief says its military has located the whereabouts of the more than 200 schoolgirls abducted last month, but expressed reluctance in using force to free them. Air Marshal Alex Bade told demonstrators that nobody should accuse the Nigerian military of not knowing what it is doing, adding that he does not want to kill the girls in the name of trying to get them back. Well, he did not disclose a location. Now, earlier, the BBC had reported that the government backed out of a deal with Islamist militant group Boko Haram earlier this month to swap some of the girls for 100 jailed Boko Haram members. It's unclear why that deal went south. Now, on a different note, the root cause of osteoporosis, which is a disease that weakens bones and makes them brittle, has long puzzled the medical community until now. Local researchers say they might have the answer, raising hopes for the development of new treatment. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
This is what the bones would look like in a patient diagnosed with osteoporosis, a bone disease characterized by impaired bone strength and reduced bone mass. Compared to a normal bone, the spaces in between make them vulnerable even to the slightest shock. Until now, there has been no specific treatment for osteoporosis, and the current medications come with many side effects. But there is new hope for sufferers as Korean researchers believe they've uncovered the core cause. This mouse does not have the gene NF1C, which is related to the formation of bones. It is much smaller in contrast to a normal mouse, and its teeth have not developed properly. A micro-CT scan showed that its bone density had been greatly reduced, just as it would in a patient diagnosed with osteoporosis.
In the mouse without NF1C, its osteoblastoma, or cells that form bones, increase, but its fat cells decrease.
The researchers found that when the mouse received a bone marrow stem cell transplant containing the gene, its bones developed just like they would in a normal mouse. The new discovery could pave way for the development of new medication or treatment for human patients.
We can use the genes in the form of cell therapy, but it is limited. Our next step is to find a new substance that can enhance the functions of the genes in order to develop new medication.
The findings have been published in the online edition of journal Stem Cell. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And on another note, Buddhist temples in Korea have been opening themselves up to foreigners and visitors for years now to give them the sense of what it's like to live as a monk. Our Park Geun-hye walks us through the latest additions to this temple stay program.
Since the Temple Stay program was first introduced in 2002, it's become one of Korea's most representative cultural programs, especially for foreign tourists who want a unique experience during their time here. With the popularity of the program rising, the number of people participating in the Temple Stay program has increased about 70 times over the last 12 years.
And to meet the new demands of people living in this ever-changing society, the Jogae Order, the largest Buddhism sect in Korea, has revamped its Temple Stay program.
A total of 13 pilot temples around the country will launch the new programs starting next month. They will focus on tapping into 4 themes: constellation, health, emptiness, and vision, and are composed of diverse new routines from walking meditation under the moon and music therapy to mountain climbing and yoga, each according to its theme. However, other key routines that have been staples of the Temple Stay program, like Zen meditation, eating the meals a monk might, and tea ceremonies, will remain unchanged.
Temple Stay program started when Korea hosted the World Cup in 2002. Many people have found comfort and happiness at temples. We are now trying to make the program more systematic based on the 4 new themes.
The Jogae Order has also launched a new line of stationery products inspired by the hundreds of traditional Korean patterns found on temples. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And now it's time for our daily arts and culture segment. Of course, our correspondent Im Yoon-hee joins me live in the studio. Today, we are going to be talking about new Hollywood movies that are posing as threats for Korea's movie industry. So good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So as I understand, there are a couple of movies out of Hollywood that have been topping the box office here in Korea, and much to the disappointment to the Korea's movie industry.
Right, so if you recall, a little while ago, we talked about a couple Korean movies they released earlier this month, The Fatal Encounter and The Target. Now, both were released with high anticipation when they were first released, earlier this month.
Right, but they didn't really hold up for as long as that we had expected them to.
Right, it was strange. They both had that recipe for success. Very exciting, a star-studded cast. In fact, The Fatal Encounter actually did push down The Amazing Spider-Man and hold the #1 position on the charts for 2 weeks. However, that's when Godzilla came into the picture and kind of pushed the Korean movies down once again. And now we have the latest installment of X-Men. And so with that said, let's take a quick look.
It's the 7th installment in the hit Marvel comic book series brought to the big screen, and it just may be the most successful. X-Men: Days of Future Past released in theaters in 119 countries around the world, and in each, topped box offices. The story starts with the future X-Men crew, set in the middle of a war between humans and mutants. It could be the end of existence for all mutants unless drastic measures are taken. That's why they decide to send Wolverine to the past in order to prevent their war from ever taking place. Played by Hugh Jackman, Wolverine must go back and convince the old X-Men that their future is in jeopardy unless an alliance is made. Enemies become allies and differences are forgotten, all in the name of saving the mutant race. But is it too late? This Hollywood blockbuster opened late last week, but has already set records, bringing in the biggest opening weekend in 2014. According to the Korean Film Commission, the movie attracted over 1 million viewers in just 3 days, a number higher than Disney's Frozen. Expectations are high for the comic hero movie this weekend, but there might be a surprise in store. Set to release on the 29th, the Korean-produced film A Hard Day is expected to be another popular movie this weekend. It's only the second movie by director Kim Sung-hoon, but because it seems to have been so well received by viewers thus far, it's garnered quite a bit of attention on the peninsula. It's a crime-action thriller film about homicide detective Ko Gun-soo, who commits a fatal hit-and-run. And to prevent his career in the police force from getting derailed, he covers up the manslaughter. He tries to hide the body in his mother's casket, but someone seems to know his little secret and isn't willing to let him rest. Actor Lee Sun-gyun stars in this film as the corrupt detective in this gritty thriller. The movie is filled with action scenes performed by the actor himself, and after being screened at the director's fortnight in France, it should be a hit at the theaters here in Korea.
Now, actually, our in-house movie critic, and we talked about the director's fortnight and A Hard Day being screened there, and I hear that it got lots of praisals and a standing ovation from the Cannes.
Right, so this parallel program, it did show there, and people were very excited. It did see some good response. Now, there were no awards, unfortunately, but the fact that it was shown there really shows that this movie did, stand up there in the international community.
Right, so this will be opening for the Korean public this weekend, I believe.
Right, so it's going to be showing. It actually showed a few weeks ago at the Cannes, like we said, but we had to wait here in Korea a few more weeks to catch it here. But I'm really curious to see how it plays out this weekend, as it does release this weekend, and X-Men will be the second weekend that it shows, and so we'll have to see who comes out on top of the list.
All right, well, we will be looking forward to that, and I will be checking both of the films out this weekend.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you for that report, Yoon-hee.
My pleasure.
It's another hot spring day here in Korea with highs in the upper 20s to low 30s. Now, we could have had a perfect weather today if it weren't for the mix of fog and high levels of fine dust across the nation. Now, the levels of fine dust have gone up even higher than yesterday. Seoul is at 164 micrograms and the southern regions have levels over 200, which all of these are about 5 times higher than the standard levels. Now, we have mostly clear sunny skies right now, but not completely clear because of that mix of fog and the fine dust, which will remain throughout the day. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 29 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 29 and 27 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 29, Dokdo at 27, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 19. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
And that is just about all from me at this hour. I'm Moon Geon-hye. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.